Om Maganati Madanda Syanganagana Saraka Chaksurun Minidam Yanatashmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yanabhutare Swayam Rupa Kiramayam Darati Swapanadikam Vandeham Shri Guru Siyata Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Rakanatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishikan Vitam Sitam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pasaya Bhutade Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Dhanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sunyapati Paskata De Satarine Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jigapate Gopisha Gopika Kantara Kanta Namostute Jayadam Surito Pango Mammadir Matirgati Matsavashapanam Bhojara Dharmada Mohanam Sriman Rasa Rasaram Vamsi Pada Karsan Venershano Giri Gopinata Sri Esaram Divyad Brindaranyaka, Drinrad Binjanaka Padrumada, Srimad Ratnagata Shima Sanishta, Sri Sri Radha Shidagovene Prasada Behave Seva Manashmarami. Namo Brahmanya Dabaya Go Brahmanya Taya Chajikati Taya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Mangalang Bhagavan Vishnu Mangaram Gurudadijam Mangaram Panidikaksho Mangaraya Tarovadi. Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Prachodhyate. Om Mahadevi Cha Vidmahi Vishnu Padni Cha Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Prachodhyate. Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Sare Sare Hari Pare Namastubhyam Dhyaride. Tapta Kanjana Gonangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanasute Devi Pranamani Hari Pare. Subham Karoti Kaya Ramaragam Danasambaram Sati Buddhi Vanasana Dipajoti Namostute. Om Agana Dimananda Sangana Gana Sanaka Chaksurun Minitam Enatajmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukam Kavid Bakarian Savarishmaran Pangagir Langanda De Katarigane Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Dev Maheshwara Guru Shaksha Parabrahma Tajmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Transcendental Tuesday. We've moved on this week from the 31st verse in the 6th chapter of the first canto of the Bhagavatam to the 33rd verse, which is a really, really interesting verse. Good morning, Brent. Good morning, Vinod. Good morning, Bhai Bobby. This is, as far as we can tell, the 51st anniversary of the day when Bhai Bobby and I got married. As far as we can tell, it was May 17th, 1971, that we tied the Hridaya Granthim, the knot, in Sydney, Australia. Devotee named Mohanananda performed the ceremony. I was wearing a white sari with a nice pink trim. She'd sewed that trim on herself. And she was the most gorgeous bride ever in the history of the world. Gorgeous and talented. So yeah, that's 71, 81, 91, 2001, 2011, 2021. As far as I can calculate, 51 years. Yes, last year obviously we celebrated our 50th anniversary, but in our culture it's more auspicious to add the one. So 50 is what? The golden anniversary. 51, the one represents Krishna. All of our donors, they always give $11. They don't give 10, they give 11. They don't give 20, they give 21. They don't give 50, they give 51. They don't give 100, they give 101. They don't give 1,000, they give 1,001, 5,001. So 51, I believe, would be even more auspicious landmark than 50. Thank you, Britta. Thank you, Janatari, for wishing us a half a century of marriage, and certainly been a wonderful. I wouldn't change a thing. I'm the luckiest guy alive. You know, grooms often say on their marriage day, I'm the luckiest man alive, but oftentimes, exactly more than 50% of the time in America, within a year or 2 years, they're not feeling that way anymore. But I feel like at 51 years, I feel like I'm the luckiest guy alive. Better to say that after 51 years than to say it at marriage and then want to retract it. I heard a joke one time. Priest married a couple took the man aside after the ceremony, said, "Congratulations, you're at the end of all your troubles." A year later, the fellow came back and he grabbed the priest by the collar and he's going to punch him. The priest said, "Why?" He said, "When you married me, you said I was at the end of all my troubles." The priest said, "But I didn't say which end." But I can say with a smile on my face to Sachi Bishwash, to Britta, to Brent, to Vinod Kapoor, and to my dear wife who's dressing Gornitai deities today, that I'm the luckiest guy in the world. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranams to one and all. Really, Pragayata Shravyayani, Tirthapada Priyashabaha, Ahuta me Sigram, morning Rakeshji, Darshanam Yata Chetashi. This is really nice statement by Narada Muni. He says, the Supreme Personality, good morning Jay, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, whose glories and activities are pleasing to hear. Atmaramastamuni and Nagranti Korvandiya. Sometimes less intelligent people mistake the activities of Krishna for those of an ordinary, even extraordinary historical personality. But it is stated that those Atmaramas have given up all attachment for love affairs, romances, epics, the big screen, conspiracies, revenge, all those themes which permeate Hollywood films and books. They love to hear about the activities and pastimes of Krishna. In the Mahabharata, all those elements are still there. There's betrayals, there's politics, there's revenge, there's love affairs, romance, but because it is Krishna-centered, the whole character, the whole nature of it changes. Instead of dragging us down and filling us with lusty thoughts, reattach and reinforcing our attachment to material life, the result of hearing Satam Prashangam Mavirya Sambido Bhavantvidi Kana Rashayana Para to Joshana Shuva Pargarashini Shadharaktir Bhaktir, the chains of lust, anger, and greed. When we hear about the heroic, high-minded activities, birth and activities of the Lord, it loosens the chains of material bondage around the heart of the living being. It cleanses the heart, and it propels one upwards and not downwards, as is the case with so many narratives and fiction and movie and so on and so forth. So Narada Muni said that due to repeated hearing and recitation, day and night by constant recitation, chant the great mantra without hesitation, free from temptation with the sensation of feeling yourself lower in the straw in the street, more taller than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige. Humility is the key to enjoy the vibration eternally. Chanting the holy names cleanses the heart, extinguishes flames, breaks the chains, blesses the earth at large with moonlight rays, discharging waves of nectar our sense has been craving since ancient days. The holy names put all their blessings to shame. Krishna Govinda chanted anywhere, everywhere. The mercy Shakti is fully there. A divine app to restore your mental software. Zap the malware, restart your heart, tap the reservoir of the care. No hard and fast rules, no lessons, no schools. The bliss of bhakti rare, yet free for the taking. Only declare that your heart is aching. Narada Muni says that as a result of his mature, attentive, absorbing intonation of the vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. The effect of that is that the Lord appears on his heart as if called for. In America, they say the dog is man's best friend. In India, it wasn't so much the fact, but nowadays you go to India, a lot of people keep dogs in their house. And you'll see them walking them in the morning. To keep a dog in the house was not part of traditional Vedic culture at all. But everybody likes the fact that the dog is loyal. The dog is faithful. There are many cases where the dog will lay down its life to save the owner. That we love about the dog. Even Chanakya Pandit says the quality of loyalty, the quality of faithfulness, you can learn from the dog. Whatever other ignominious habits, dietary preferences the dog may have, he stands above and beyond because of his loyalty. So that loyalty of the dog comes from Krishna. Krishna is defined as that source from which everything comes. There's nothing, no good quality, no beauty, nothing striking, nothing attractive in this created material world which did not have its origin in the Supreme. Not only did it have its origin in the Supreme, but you'll find that quality multiplied unlimitedly in the personality, the Supreme Personality of God. If it's May and it's 80 degrees in May, we had our Festival of Colors in Ogden last Saturday. It's a great event. It was about 75 degrees or so. So I got a little burned. I noticed Joshua also. When I went to put the tika on him on the Sunday program, I noticed that his forehead and his cheeks were somewhat reddened. I at least wore a hat. Apparently Joshua didn't wear a hat, so he was even more reddened than I did. Okay, now, would it be logical that if you got a sunburn by staying out in the sunshine at a Festival of Colors in an open field in Ogden for 3 or 4 hours, or 5 or 6, would it be logical then to say that if you got burned 93 million miles away from the sun, that the sun is cold? No, I don't think so. The logic of it is that the sun is billions of times hotter. If it can burn you 93 million miles away, imagine the heat on the surface of the sun itself. How many BTUs are there? Wow. Britta is very fair-skinned. She said she's rosy from the sun too. Well, I'm always from northern England. I remember we met in Australia. This is before we were married. We were traveling together. I think it was called Green Island in Queensland. It was a beautiful place where you could put on a set of goggles and snorkel and see the parts of the barrier reef, a lot of fishes. I remember we saw a nice cute little octopus there in the sand that day. So we spent a few hours in the shallow waters off the Great Barrier Reef, I think. And then towards evening, she started losing it. She started getting all dizzy and everything and vomiting because of the fair-skinned northern England. And Britta, you're red-haired. So that's very much the case with fair-skinned, red-haired people. Be careful in the sun. I've always had a couple bouts with melanoma as well. Yes, at least in the physical world. Yes, the sun in the spiritual world does not have that effect. You can stay out in the sun all day long and you'll not have flaky skin shortly thereafter. So chanting the holy name with devotion and with concentration, the result of it, just like you call, here Fido, here Rex, come here. And the dog will immediately stop whatever it's going and run with its tail practically wagging, moving its whole rear body back and forth, jumping up on you and slavering. That's the loyalty, that's the faithfulness of the dog. So that comes from Krishna. This verse evokes that sense of Krishna coming. Krishna is Aishwarya Shamagasha Virya Shaya Gyanabhara Ahameva Shameva Nanyatsara Pashaname. Before the sun, before the moon, before the stars, before Shiva, before Brahma, before Vishnu, there was Krishna. Ishvara Parama Krishna. He is that powerful person of Suryagni Kamanu Deva Shamvishamid Kamkushayam Hiyate Deshach. Madbayat Patiyatam Surishtapati Varsatindura Mitas Charidya, said out of fear of Krishna. The sun rises, the sun sets, the winds are blowing, the seasons are changing. The tides are coming in and out, the moon is waxing and waning. Out of fear of that Ishvara Parama, that supreme personality of Godhead, that supreme controller Krishna. And out of fear of Krishna, death, Mitu Sarvaharascham, is chasing everyone. That Krishna comes when you call him with devotion. Like a dog. He appears being bidden by you. Who are we? We are 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair. We're like a particle of sunshine compared to the powerful sun itself. And yet, although we're insignificant, That does not mean we get all down and depressed and think, oh, I'm nothing, I don't make any difference. I'm extraneous. I'm not important. No, just the opposite. In the eyes of God, you're his precious creation. You're one of a kind. He made you and he stepped back and he said, he or she is wonderfully and fearfully made. Another masterpiece. So not because of who we are, our size, our abilities, our capacities, but because of who created us, each and every one of us. This is the theme song at the Color Festival. Hey, Color Nation, peeps gathered all together. Doesn't matter your station, doesn't matter the time or the weather. We gather to love one another, share the planet respectfully. We all sisters and brothers celebrate our independency, giving out lots of free hugs, tucking each other to our chests. We don't need no drink or drugs to believe that we are the best. That's true. We don't need no drink or drugs. We don't need no sense gratification to feel totally happy, totally fulfilled, totally purposeful, to step into the glory of our own nature. It says, Mahimi means you are glorious. You are great. Though only 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair, you are divine. You are the same nature as God. And when you step away from selfishness, when you step away from the degradation of animalistic sense gratification, you step into your own glory. You step away from sense gratification. You step into your own glory as a beloved part and parcel of Krishna, eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. Chanaka Pandit, whom Prabhupada quotes a lot. I was doing a search in the database this morning, and I put in the name Chanaka. Wow, there's at least 50 different quotes. And Prabhupada quotes him extensively. And Prabhupada has a lot of reverence, you can tell, for Chanaka Pandit. So Chanaka, amongst his many nitis, his many slokas, he says, if you want sense gratification, then give up any aspirations for knowledge. The pursuit of sense gratification automatically voids transcendental knowledge. On the other hand, if you want transcendental knowledge, you have to give up self-motivated sense gratification. He doesn't allow any room, any overlap. You have to choose the one or the other. Door number A or door number B. Sense gratification, no knowledge. Knowledge, no sense. Now, sounds extreme, right? No sense gratification. We're not actually saying no sense gratification. We're saying no self-centered sense gratification. Sense gratification is there in the material world and the spiritual, but the difference is that in spiritual life, we try for Krishna's sense gratification and not our own. We get gratified, but it's a byproduct. It's not the main purpose. The main purpose is to please He from whom we come. Because we've forgotten the central principle. We've forgotten He from whom we come. We've forgotten that having all the same Supreme Spiritual Father, Sri Krishna, we are, whether our bodies are male or female, or black or white, or Asian or Hispanic or Latino, we are all related. We're all part of the same spiritual family. And as such, we need to work together. We need to pool our talents and resources and abilities for pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the formula for peace in the world. Because everybody is self-interested, there's friction, there's strife, there's conflict. The solution is one God, one service, one mantra, one scripture, above and beyond all others. Not to the exclusion of others, but trumping, eclipsing all others. The Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. It's called the Maha Mantra. It is the greatest of all mantras. There are many names for God. Nam Nama Kari Bahada Nija Saiva Shakti Tatapita Nimatishmadatena Karita Dushita Bakripa Bhagwan Dardaiva Midishami Ajani Naragaham. And there are no hard and fast rules for chanting them. However, Whether a name of God refers to his beauty or strength or fame or wealth or knowledge, at the end of the day, it all translates into meaning that Krishna or God is all attractive. Meaning all attractive, Krishna is the highest, most comprehensive, all-encompassing nomenclature for God. Now, here is what Narada Muni says about the nature of the Absolute, and how it is. The Absolute and his name are non-different. He says here, the Lord is non-different from his transcendental name, form, pastimes, and sound vibrations thereof. As soon as a pure devotee, and that should be our aspiration. It's nice to chant once in a while. It's nice to go to the temple on Sundays. It's nice to hang around with the devotees occasionally. But really, those are just baby steps. Everyone who calls himself or herself a devotee should be moving progressively forwards towards the goal of satatam yuktanam bhajatam, always engaging in the service of the Lord. If last year you're at 10%, this year you should be at 12%. If last year you were at 20%, this year you should be at 25%. You should always be shedding off, sloughing off attachments, and accepting more and more responsibilities for Krishna. And when you reach that point in Australia, one time Upendra came out from a private darshan with Prabhupada, and he recounted the conversation. He had said, Prabhupada, I've been your disciple for 3 or 4 years now. I was your servant in San Francisco. You were satisfied with my service. You sent me away. You broke my heart. You told me to go to Australia. I did it. Now we have temples, we have men. Prabhupada himself was visiting Australia. So Upendra said, so when am I going to see Krishna? When is Krishna going to give me perfect, clear direction for my life? And Prabhupada had him open 10:10, I think it is, or 10:8. Tesham satati yuktanam bhajanam priti dadami buddha. To those who are constantly, without any cessation, engaged in my devotional service, to them I give the understanding by which they can come. To those people I come, bidden by them as a dog comes when his master whistles. The Supreme Lord, who has no Lord over him, who is the Lord of all lords, runs to his devotee at the sound of his name. It's like a dog runs to his master. Not only that, he becomes visible. Santa Sadaya Bodhidaya Shubiloki Anti. The devotee himself or herself, Tasya Tvam Tamasho Dushpada Shakchakchura Lavdamitana. Devahuti said of her son, Kapil, because I have yearned, I have hankered after you in devotion, and I have served you as a mother. That service, that God-centered service, as opposed to self-centered service, burns up the reactions to all of one's sinful activities. And Devahuti said, because I've served you as a mother, that powerful, selfless, motherly love and service has quickly burned up all the reactions to my sinful activity. Now, with purified senses, Tasya Tvam Tamashonasha, the Tama is gone, the darkness, the inertia of ignorance is gone, being burned up by the activity of devotional service. Result is that my eyes, Tamashuddha, Dushpara Chakshur Jamanamante, Labdametoa, now I have attained these, after many, many births, these transcendental eyes by which I am seeing you face to face as my very own son. And it was Kapil, in his instructions to Devahuti, who said, Bhakta Bhoga Parikika. Yes, that is the result. That when you give up personal sense gratification in favor of pleasing the senses of Krishna, you come out of illusion, you come out of bondage, you taste the fruits of freedom, and you stand in your own glory. Each and every one of us has to make that choice. Sense gratification or Krishna gratification. Kamendra priti bhaji tari barakar, Krishnendra priti iji tari premara. It is said that iron and gold are both metals. And in that sense, they're equal. But they don't have the same value. So, personal sense gratification is degrading, it's animalistic. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Following the tongue, following the eyes, following the ears, following the nose, following the sense of touch. There's no meaning, there's no purpose, focus, or direction. There's no redeeming quality of such a life spent in sense gratification. But on the other hand, smelling the flowers and incense that are offered to Krishna, speaking about the glories of Krishna, taking prasadam, hearing about Krishna, seeing the beautiful form of the Krishna, chanting, playing the harmonium and the mridanga, this is like gold. The previous was like iron, this is like gold. Kama prema don hakara vipana loaram yajashuruparam. Gold and iron, again, the same example is given in Chaitanya Sri. They're both metals, but they're not of the same value. Krishna consciousness is that activity which can satisfy, and it's the only activity which can satisfy. So we entitled our talk, The Sage Who Lived Underwater. So before our time expires, we better tell that story. So powerful in terms of repressing his senses was the sage Subara Muni we learned in the pages of Bhagavatam and Mahabharata, that he meditated for hundreds of years underwater. Can you imagine? How long can you hold your breath? Maybe a minute. We had one fellow, I forget what his name was, he was a BYU student, big, tall guy. And for some reason, he had this personal ambition to be able to hold his breath for 5 minutes. And, I talked with him about it one evening, and he talked about the exercises they did to expand his lungs. And from what he said, apparently his lungs are huge, And he did diving and practice. So he, his whole focus. I mean, I was a little like puzzled. Like, can't you think of anything a little bit more? I don't know, something that would help other people out more. But really, he was really. I mean, you have to admire him for his single-mindedness. But every day he would do exercises, and whenever he got a chance, he'd go underwater. And his whole ambition was to hold his breath for, I don't know what it was, 5 minutes or so. And big lung capacity. So imagine this sage living for, 100 years underwater. We talked about repression in our previous sessions last week, and how repression is really not very effective. You need to engage your senses in the param and experience the higher taste of God-centered activities. Repression is ultimately failing to achieve the shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. You're going to end up back where you started. So, after meditating and repressing his senses underwater, finally Subari saw 2 fish copulating, and that ignited into him, or reignited in him, a desire for sex life. He fell down at that point in time. So he went, imagine, he was shriveled like a prune. He'd been underwater. He was old. I don't know, he might not have smelled bad because he was in water, but he had gnarly hair, and, it was all wrinkled up and aged, and hardly an ideal suitor. So he went to King Mandada, who was king of the world at that, and he asked for, King Mandada had 50 daughters, and he said, could I have one of your daughters in marriage? And Mandada was like, I don't really think any of my daughters are going to be thrilled about marrying this guy. I love my daughters, they're very dear to me, and I really couldn't in good conscience inflict this kind of matrimony on any of them. So kings are very good at diplomacy and equivocation. So he said, of course. He didn't want to deny the sage, because sages can curse you. So he said, of course, any one of my daughters who will have you, yes, go for it. And the girls were like, I don't think so. Then Subari realized what was happening, how unattractive and unbecoming he was. So this is what he did. According to the 9th canto, 6th chapter, 43rd verse of the Bhagavatam, Muni praveshita katra kanyata puram ridimat. Kanyata means the eligible young girls. Vritasara shekanya bir ekam pancha sheshaparam. Subari was saturated with yogic powers. So realizing his undesirability, his unattractiveness, he transformed himself into a young and beautiful person. Then he was taken a second time into the palace and presented before the 50 daughters who, according to the sanction of their father, were able to choose him at will. And not 1 or 2 or 10, but all 50 were elbowing each other out of the way, stumbling over each other to choose him. So not just one chose him, but all of a sudden, from living as a sage in the water, he has 50 wives like that. And so attracted were they to his beauty that, you know how intimate sisters are. It's very hard to make a wedge between sisters. There's a lifelong, generally speaking, a lifelong bond between sisters. But once the sisters became co-wives, all that harmony dissipated, and there began to be, it became like cat fights. I want him. I'm more qualified. He's mine. He's mine. He's mine. They started, the sisterly relationship dissipated. They started quarreling among themselves. Each and every one of them wanted him. Now, Subari was a yogi, and again, yogis can expand themselves up to 9 times. Now, Krishna expands himself unlimited. That's why he's called Yogishvara, the king of all yogis. And the expansion of Krishna can each and every one of them be doing something separate, as if it had its own, with its own willpower, its own thinking, feeling, and will. So Krishna expanded himself 16,108 times in Dwarka, and every single one of those expansions was doing something different. Now, the maximum number of expansions that a yogi can achieve are, Prabhupada says, 8 or 9. And the difference between those 8 or 9 expansions and Krishna's 16,108 expansions is that the 8 or 9 expansions of yogi are just mirror images. Whatever the original's doing, the rest are doing. So in order to try to satisfy his 50 wives, Subari expanded himself 9 times. He went some distance towards satisfy them, but not all the way. Now, woman, the word for woman, is called Stri, one who expands. So, not only satisfy them sexually, but women expect the husband to provide nice things for them. Again, being a yogi, Subari was able to do that to an unprecedented degree. Listen to this. Again, 9th canto of the Bhagavatam. Because Subari was expert in chanting mantras perfectly, his severe austerities resulted in opulent palatial homes with garments, ornaments, properly dressed and decorated maidservants and manservants, and varieties of parks with clear water lakes and gardens. You know, they're rich men and they get a country estate, so after earning money in the city during the week, they go out into the country and they may have a few acres and there might be a golf course nearby. But compare that to what Subari has produced from his yogi powers. Clear water lakes, plural, gardens, plural, gardens fragrant with flowers, birds, and humming bees. And in those gardens are not only the natural sounds and smells of the flowers and the bees and the birds, but there are professional singers in every one of those gardens and lakesides. As far as Subari's homes were concerned, they were amply provided with beds, seats, ornaments, and arrangements for bathing. There are varieties of sandalwood creams, which is very expensive, I'll tell you. Flower garlands, another very expensive item. And palatable dishes, not cheap, not cheap. It's surrounded by opulent paraphernalia. And in this way, the Muni engaged in family affairs with his numerous wives. Now, the opulence of Sudari, the yogic opulence of Sudari, was at such a standard that when Mandata visited his son-in-law and his 50 daughters, he became so crestfallen. He developed such an inferiority, and he's king of the world. You know, we can imagine his living situation, but Subari's, what he had provided for his family, was so much greater that Mandata gave up his throne and went into the forest to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. He thought, if a yogi out of thin air can produce all of this, it is in fact insubstantial. Material fame, wealth, opulence, family, it is a chimera, phantasmagoria, and I desire no longer to pursue. I'm going to turn my back on all these illusory engagements and focus myself on the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. And not far behind him was Subari himself. He found that although he had more opulences than the king of the world, his father-in-law Mandata, although he had so many opulences that it caused his father-in-law to give up the throne and go to the forest, he himself was not satisfied. Now, if you're trying for a second car, or you're trying to buy a house, move from an apartment to a house, or move from a 2-bedroom house to a 4-bedroom house, and you think that'll make you happy, well, maybe you could save some time and energy and learn a lesson from Subari Muni. I'm not saying don't get a more reliable car if you don't need it. Don't get a house with enough bedrooms if you need it. I'm not saying not to get the things that you need. We don't need excess. But if you need a 4-bedroom house, then get a 4-bedroom house. If you need a better car, get a better car. If you need to eat more healthy to keep yourself free from disease, then go ahead and make those arrangements. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that increasing your material influence and your leverage is going to make you happy. Look at Subari Muni. He said, "Evam griheshu abirato visha and bibidaisuka sevimana chatyudir adirstoga ivanalai." It is described in the 9th canto again that although Subari Muni achieved sense gratification at a level higher than the king of the world, he was not at all satisfied. The example is given as a fire never ceases blazing when fed with drops of fat. It's the opposite. The more fat you put into the fire, the more the fire blazes up. So the more you feed a craving for sense gratification, the more those cravings become stronger and stronger and stronger, and you become eventually bound hand and foot. You give up, you sacrifice your precious independence and your freedom in order to satisfy the tongue, the nose, the eyes, the ears, and the mouth. And such is never the case with the devotees. They engage yatpada pankaja palashveda karmasanam karuna tadavam yashamatyo yatiro shrotiganam tamaranam bhajavasadevam. It's amazing how devotees work side by side with beautiful women. They hear beautiful music. They eat sumptuous food, and yet their senses are not degraded. They don't fall down. They don't have appetites which are running out of control, nor do they aspire for material fame, name, opulence, but engaged in the service of the Lord, they are free. They achieve complete freedom from karmic bondage and karmic attachment. So, taking our page from the book of Subari Muni, we have to conclude that the policy of trying to satisfy material desires by catering to material demands will never, ever, ever be successful. Now, what are the activities in the area of sense gratification? Someone may say, well, true, I don't eat much. I live in a simple house. I drive a Toyota Corolla. I like to think of myself as being free from sense gratification. Now, Prabhupada describes here the areas in which sense gratification is ubiquitous. And you'll be surprised that many of the things that you think of as selfless, as giving, are really just for the satisfaction of the senses, the mind, and the ego. Devotional service to Krishna is so distinct from all these different areas of self-interest that it can never, ever be mistaken for charity, philanthropy, etc., etc. So Prabhupada says here, and this is really revealing, okay? He's saying that anything less than pure devotional service with Krishna as the center, anything other than trying to satisfy Krishna with undivided mind, intention, and devotion is going to be in the area of ego. So, acts of sense gratification may be performed under the cover of public welfare, nationalism, religion, ethical codes, biblical codes, health directives, fruitive action, bashfulness, I don't understand that one, tolerance, getting it? Personal comfort, liberation, salvationism, I'm serving you, God, to get my salvation. That's sense gratification. Progress, material affection, or fear of social ostracism or legal punishment. All these categories are different subdivisions of one substance, sense gratification. All such good acts are performed basically for one's own sense gratification, for no one can sacrifice his personal interest. No one can sacrifice his personal interest. In other words, you have a general desire to work selflessly, but it's not so easy to sacrifice self-interest. Self-interest has to be burned up by the higher interest of satisfying Krishna. You can't just throw out self-interest. You have to, what's the word? You have to subordinate it to the higher interest of Krishna. You have to connect it. You have to subsume it. That's the word. You have to take your self-interest and subsume it in the interest of Krishna. So Prabhupada says, but above all this is a transcendental stage in which one feels himself to be only and exclusively. In other words, is what I'm doing honoring Krishna? Is this activity, feeding people, honoring Krishna? Is this association, are these people whom I'm spending time with, are they honoring Krishna? Is this honoring Krishna? These words that I'm speaking, this career that I'm pursuing, this family that I'm raising, these movies that I'm watching, this food that I'm eating, do these activities honor Krishna? And if they do, then you're on a transcendental stage in which you feel yourself to be exclusively a servant of Krishna. Now, in the material world, as soon as you say the word servant, people recoil. There's a lot of confusion around the word servant. Generally, a servant means one who is obliged, who is indentured, who is indebted to another. His servant is someone who is owned, at least in part, by another. But divine service, service of the supreme, independent personality of Godhead, gives independence to the servitor. And as soon as one relinquishes one's eternal service to the Lord, turns one's back on one's perennial relationship with the Lord, at that moment, the gunas, the ropes, the chains of goodness, passion, and ignorance begin to envelop him. Dehi agoti tovargo, nature kamati, koshikari vatmanam karmana chadumoyati. I think it was Vritasura in the 6th canto who says, we, acting independent of Krishna, create bonds by which we're bound up hand and foot. We give up our freedom in the same way that the caterpillar binds himself inside of a cocoon, packs himself up, and leaves no room for movement. You see, the only true and tried path for freedom is to become a servant of he who is the most free. Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Viga, Anadira Dira Govinda, Sayavakaranakaranam. So we'll leave our topic on this note. We'll end here today, Transcendental Tuesday. I continue to be out putting up posters in Salt Lake City and taking down valuable chain link signs that we'd put up in Ogden. So whether I'll be back at the temple tomorrow or not remains to be determined by how much work I can get done today. So I'm going to hit the road, see if I can get a full day of postering for the upcoming Salt Lake City Festival on June 11th and retrieve a number of our signs from Ogden as well so that we can use them again next year. We're excited now because having gotten the Ogden Festival under our belt, which is very successful, we have a straight shot. I just have this little business of advertising the Salt Lake City Festival. Then we're going to be 100% focused on the Sadhu Sangh coming up in a couple of weeks. Let's see, the decorator, Krishna Murari, is coming all the way from New Zealand. He's arriving tomorrow in Spanish Fork to do the decorations. The cook, Duruka, who is the chef at Kalachanji's, the famous vegetarian restaurant in Dallas, Texas, he's arriving on Friday, and his assistants will start coming. On Saturday, Govind Charan and his wife Rasika, and the main organizer, are going to be coming. All of them arriving a week to 10 days before. And every day we're getting deliveries from Prime, from UPS, pots, pans, flooring. It's going to be a major production. I have to hand it to Govinda Charan for he's got an incredible mind for details. If I had to process 1/10 of the number of details that he's processing, I'd have smoke coming out of my ears and my head would explode. So beginning from now on, we're going to have more and more influx of people working hard for the Sadhu Sangh. And then, of course, on the 27th or shortly thereafter, 26th, 27th, up to 1,000 devotees will be coming into the area for 4 days of Sadhu Sangh, wonderful prasadam, kirtan. It is said, Akshno phalam darshanam hi, tanu phalam gatoshangam, jiva phalam kirtanam hi, sudurabhata bhagavati hi loke. It says the perfection of association is to rub shoulders with the devotees. The perfection of the eyes is to see the devotees, and the perfection of the tongue is to chant the holy names of the Lord with the devotees. Why is all that so valuable? Because Sudurabhata bhagavati hi loke, devotees are very rare. So those rare jewel-like devotees will be coming by the hundreds to Spanish Fork, Utah in just 10 days' time, and I can't tell you how excited we are about that. All right, thank you. So let's see who we've got watching here. I'm doing this. I wasn't able to do it on Zoom because there's no internet connection here. So I'm just doing Facebook Live, and it's a little bit of a different system to see who has joined us. All I'm seeing right now is Karen Moritz. Okay, here I am. Anjali, Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for your anniversary wishes. Divya Joshi, Jean, Britta. Who else have we got here? We enjoyed so much being with Britta on Saturday up in her home turf. Her house is literally 2 doors down from West Stadium Park where we had the festival. Rakesh, Govinda Dev, Jay, Sachib, Janatari, who else? Brent, Bhai Bobby, Vinod, and then going down later, Anjali, of course. We're going to miss Anjali. No, we did miss Anjali in Ogden, but she's going to be in Salt Lake City with her beautiful voice. Okay, thanks everyone, and thanks for your emojis, thanks for your thumbs up, thanks for your hearts. We will see you tomorrow for more discussion on the ecstatic, God-centered devotional service of the Lord. In the meantime, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare